All right, well, we'll get started. So first, I would like to say thank you, Dr. Christina Lam, for joining us. I know you are so busy. You devote tons of your time to our community, and we greatly appreciate that you are meeting with us today. We'll do just a few introductions for everybody. I am Karen Marisi. I am a CDG mom and also the president of the board for CDG Care. And then Andrea, our fearless leader, she is our CDG Care founder and also a CDG mom. And she's wearing her t-shirt representing the merch. There you go. Go green for CDG. Mine was dirty because I wore it over the weekend. And then Dr. Christina Lam, you have a big, so I'm going to read it off of my paper. So you are a CDG specialist and biochemical geneticist. You are also an attending physician at Seattle Children's Hospital and associate professor in the Department of Pediatrics at the University of Washington School of Medicine, as well as a member of CDG Care's Medical Advisory Board. And I'm sure you even have more to add onto that list, but we'll keep it at that. And again, on behalf of the entire CDG community, thank you so much. You've dedicated so much of your career to CDG. I know it takes away from your own family to help our families. So virtual hug to you from everybody. And like I said, you were very popular. I would like to just tell everyone that's watching right now that we received from this post so many questions on our Facebook and Instagram, our stories. There were so many families globally from different countries all over the world that had reached out with questions. And while Dr. Lam would like to answer every single question, legally, she is unable to answer some of the medically specific questions, as I'm sure our community could understand. We also want to tell you that we are going to prioritize the questions in our live audience first. So I have the questions that were written down from the past weeks of me posting, but if you are live and you have a question, please put it in the chat. Andrea will be monitoring those questions and asking as we go along. And then if you had asked a question, or if we don't have time to answer your question, we encourage you to go on to the FCDGC. I'm really good at saying that now, right? I'm really good at saying that. I practiced. The FCDGC website, Andrea will put the link in our comment section below. You could visit that, and hopefully you will be able to find a CDG specialist that is closest to you to answer your questions. So, Andrea, do you see any questions right now?
Not yet.
Is there anybody that has joined us?
Yep, we have about 14 to 15 people on right now.
Wow, okay. I don't watch the Facebook because there's a delay, so I am not watching what's in there. So we'll just keep going. All right, so let's start with the first question, which I think is an important one. And it is, I remember this question, it was from an Instagram post. And it is asking, is there a chance that enzyme replacement therapy might be a possibility in the future for those who carry severely fatal mutations of CDG?
Wow, that's quite the question.
I know.
But first, I wanted to thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to speak to families in this forum. With regard to the question, I would have to say, as many questions are in CDG, it depends. Right. First of all, as you know, there are many types of CDGs. At this point, we're counting like 170 ish types, and there are definitely types, many of them are due to an enzyme deficiency. An enzyme is like a protein that helps a chemical reaction happen. Usually it's like to add a sugar to this growing sugar chain in CDG. And so in the types that aren't an enzyme deficiency, I would say no, because that's not the reason for the disease. In the types that are enzyme deficiencies, I would say maybe. So the majority of currently FDA-approved enzyme replacement therapies are for a group of disorders called lysosomal storage diseases, but there are also enzyme replacement therapies for other diseases that are not lysosomal as well, such as PKU or phenylalanine hydroxylase deficiency, some other rare diseases where you have a problem with an enzyme. And for it, and also the majority of those that are available help by reducing like a toxic metabolite, a toxic compound in the body, like reducing the levels of that. So in CDG, there might be some toxic metabolites in some of the conditions, but there also is thought to be a deficiency of some of the products, the things that we're trying to make. And so an enzyme replacement could be helpful for that, but we don't have as much experience. And so there would be a lot of research that would really need to be done to get that to become a real treatment for CDG, but I would definitely not say never. I think there is definitely a possibility for the types of CDG that are due to enzyme deficiencies for it to be a therapeutic option. It just is a little more complicated than just trying to reduce a toxin in CDG, and maybe the enzyme functioning at a particular time is more important than it functioning all the time at a particular level. So a few complications, but I wouldn't take away the hope of that being a therapy.
I think CDG families live on hope, so we'll accept that answer. I also feel like anything that has to do with CDG should just have the word complicated next to it, because that's really what it is. It's just all over the place, each subtype, each symptom, each therapy, it's just very complex. So, all right. So Andrea, do you have any questions in our Facebook Live?
Yes, we have some questions coming in. This is a really good general, very general clinical question that comes up a lot. So I think pretty much everybody has experienced this at some point. The question is whether sleep apnea is a common side effect or condition of CDG, and it may or may not be, but what for other people who may not have a diagnosis of sleep apnea, just sleep is such a challenge for families. Is there anything that you can tie in as a reasoning or recommendations for that in general?
Yeah, I've definitely heard a lot of families that I see in clinic bring this question up as well. I do think not for all families, as we all know, CDG is very varied and everybody's very unique, but there are many individuals with different types of CDG that have had trouble with sleep. Sleep apnea means that you're not able to breathe well during sleep. And usually it's divided into two types. It could be because you have like an obstruction. Like, for example, if you have low tone, which is a symptom of many types, not all types of CDG, but many types of CDG, your muscles are really floppy. And because your muscles are floppy, that can really lead to even your tongue or, the muscles around the neck blocking intermittently the airway, making it harder to breathe and causing sleep apnea. So not breathing at that point. And that definitely has been seen in many types of CDG. And then there's also this other type of sleep apnea is central apnea. And that is due to kind of the brain signal not going through properly to let individuals know to breathe, properly. And that also has been seen in many individuals in many different types of CDG, especially the ones that have different challenges and differences in their brain structure or brain functioning. And so I would say, yes, sleep and apnea, which contributes to dysfunctional sleep, is it's a symptom that can be seen in many individuals with many types of CDG, especially the ones with lower tone, the ones with their central nervous system brain affected. And in terms of how to approach that, I think there are sleep clinics that are available, and there are different types of supported therapies for both the obstructive sleep apnea as well as the central sleep apnea. And so I wouldn't want to provide any specific medical recommendations here, but I would recommend that you touch base with your physician and consider talking to a sleep specialist. Many of them are lung doctors or pulmonologists, and that could be very helpful. There's some locations where you even have a sleep clinic, so you can ask about that.
Yeah.
Was that the question? Did I miss a part of the question?
Yeah, no, that was very helpful. I actually never correlated the low tone with the sleep apnea, but it makes sense. So, and I feel like, and this has a lot to do with CDG anyway, I feel like it's trial and error with what works for your specific child compared to another child that maybe even has the same subtype or sleep problems. So yeah, I think that answers it. Very good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the therapies and treatments that are out there apply to all CDGs. It's really the symptom, the severity, and what exactly is leading to that breathing issue in sleep that helps sort out which treatment is more helpful.
Great. Andrea, do we have any more questions?
So we do have a few questions. I am going to probably wait till after and we can reply to some of the families about this. One is specifically some PIG-Q questions, PIGQ. And then the other one is very general about coagulation and glycosylation and why there is such a challenge on different clotting factors in general. But I think we can get to those offline, and I haven't seen any more come through. So I'm going to jump back to you, Karen.
Yeah,
with some of the pre-submitted questions.
There were a lot of PICU questions that I saw just going through the comments. So we see you. All right, so let's move on. So let's go on to the next question. What would it take for a gene therapy to be developed for CDG?
Gene therapy, that's like
I know.
very hot right now in terms of that.
It's trending. Gene therapy is trending right now.
It's trending. Yes, it's going viral.
Yeah.
The funny thing is a lot of gene therapies are administered through viral vectors. So
yeah,
maybe.
seriously.
Gene therapy is again definitely a possibility in CDG. Each particular type of CDG is due to a different gene. That's how we define them. And so each type of CDG, if there were a gene therapy to be developed, would be a different gene therapy. So if we were to treat all CDG with gene therapy, we have 170 of them, we need 170 different gene therapies. Not saying that each one specific gene therapy could not be developed for a particular CDG. What would it take for gene therapy developed? It takes
lots of money.
For like everything else, time, money, expertise, and dedication of the families and a lot of science. But gene therapy is actually in development for some CDG. It usually starts by what we call basic science in the lab, trying to develop the actual, virus and the DNA fragment and how to get that in the basic lab first. And then it has to be tested in animals to see if it's doing anything. So if there's an animal model, that's great. But there are also CDGs that don't have animal models. And then we also need to find out what the natural history is for each particular condition, or at least in general. So we have to know what the symptoms are that we're hoping that a therapy like gene therapy would help with, and how that changes over time, so that we know that if we give a gene therapy or any other therapy, that it's actually helpful and not just you gave something and we don't know if it's really helpful. Right. in order to know that, when you know the natural history, then you would know what kind of endpoints are to develop the clinical trials, which are needed for gene therapy to be tested in people, for both safety and to see if they're effective. And then there's the clinical trials. One thing I do want to mention about gene therapy is that gene therapy is very promising, but it's still not, unfortunately, a complete cure in the majority of types that are currently under trial. It does correct the primary reason, the original reason that the symptoms exist, because there was a misspelling in the gene, which led to, maybe it's the enzyme that's not working or some protein transport or something like that, which then leads to the sugars not being attached to the proteins or fats properly, the glycosylation not happening properly, which leads to the symptoms. So you're saying, oh, we were able to correct the original cause. But at the same time, a lot of times when we do gene therapy, even the ones in current clinical trials for other diseases, it doesn't fully correct every copy of the gene, and it may or may not last forever. Like the pieces you give, sometimes it just doesn't last. Some of the cells don't stay. So all these things have to be worked out to see if this is really beneficial for each individual who receives gene therapy. So there are a lot of pieces, but it's
there's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like it's hopeful, right? It's promising, it's hopeful. It's not that it wouldn't happen. It's just we're still in the beginning.
Absolutely. Actually, I know that there are at least 2 or 3 types of CDG where gene therapy has already been worked on in the lab. And the question is whether or not we can move it to, and some have been tested in animals and looks promising. And then I know for one type, we're looking for how many millions of dollars to see if we can do this clinical trial. For other types, they're looking for the animal model. So it's kind of one at a time. And I think there's even a type of muscle disease that's CDG related that they have done some human trials. So there, it's CDG. Yeah, there are definitely people working on gene therapy and CDG. Nothing's been FDA approved yet.
Right.
But it is a work in progress. It is definitely a possible treatment for it.
Great. Andrea, any questions? I think we'll probably only take one more.
Okay, yes, I do have a question on here, and anybody who submitted questions online, we are keeping them and we will respond to them. So your questions are not lost. This is a general question, and I think it's important, especially as we have a lot of newly diagnosed families. And I know we have some webinars out there, but this is actually a family right now who happens to be in the hospital, and this would be a HUD question. But why is it that, or is it that you have a deficiency or a syndrome? So this one would be CAD deficiency, yet we call it CDG1Z. Is that the same thing? A little bit about the nomenclature, maybe just a little bit of background education about how we can have multiple names for the same disorder and what that means to a family, because I hear doctors giving all these different explanations and names and terms, but from our CDG expert, maybe that would help our families, especially the newer families that are on the call.
Yeah, I think this has always been a challenge, and not just CDG, but in many different conditions where the nomenclature or the way a disease is named changes over time. So CAD deficiency, CDG1Z, I believe it's 1Z. I haven't looked that up recently. So if it's not, please excuse me, but they are the same. The reason that the older nomenclature was the one that we would use type 1 or type 2, and then 1A, B, C, D, all the way to past Z, to AA, B, AB, I believe, etc. That was the older nomenclature. And when that came about, when we first started to learn there was more than one type of CDG. So at the very beginning, we thought there was only one type of CDG that changes how you add sugars to proteins in this one disease. But then as we learned more, we realized, oh no, there are multiple types. And so the way that we kind of initially differentiated it was by type 1 versus type 2 based on how a particular test looked, the transferrin IEF, sorry, it's isoelectric focusing. This is an old test where how it kind of looked on that test, a type 1 pattern versus a type 2 pattern. And then we realized there were more and more, and then we started naming them. Okay, it's a type 1 pattern, but it's the second one, so it's 1B, the third one we found, 1C, and then we found so many that we ran out of letters. And at that point, the leader in the field, Dr. Jachen out in Belgium, and a whole group of CDG experts sat down and decided this is not the way to go about naming them moving forward, as now we have over 170, around 170 types. And so around, I think it was 2008 or so, the decision was, okay, moving forward, we want to try to transition the nomenclature now to be gene specific, because we're defining each type of CDG by the gene that has misspellings in it. And so the most recent, what we're trying to go by, way to name a CDG, to have that name for the disease, is the gene name, which in this case would be CAD CDG. And then because the old nomenclature has been around for so long, many doctors and patients are really, like, they know it much better. That is still around. And then sometimes you'll put kind of that in parentheses afterwards. And sometimes the literature that was published before that change, doesn't change. It's a piece of paper that still has that. And so when you're looking at literature that's still valuable, all of that research that was done before the change in the name happened, you would still need to know that that matches up with the new name. And so that's why it's still around. But that's kind of a little bit of the history of how CDGs are named. And unfortunately, it is a little confusing, even not just for patients, but even for doctors and researchers. And we're trying our best to try to explain what the current, the current standard is now.
Great.
That was
That was
great.
very informative. All right, so we are going to end this. That is it for all of the questions. Like Andrea said, we will get back and respond to all of your questions at some point. Dr. Lam, thank you so much. You are amazing. You are so smart, and you explain it in a way that it's understanding for our families. If there is a family that wanted to come see you at Seattle Children's Hospital, what would be the best way to book your time? Would it be to call? Is there anything that Andrea can add to the chat for patients?
Yeah, there is a email and also a phone number to call. Basically, I need a referral. And
Okay.
then after that referral is placed, and if individuals don't know how to refer, then let me find the website. I wasn't prepared for this.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. But there is a website as to how to refer a patient, and then just sending through that, there's a phone number, and
It'd just be like their general physician would have to refer them to you.
yeah, and then there's a process then that gets initiated. Exactly.
Okay. All right.
And I see
And I posted the FCDGC website, which has the clinic contact locations
Great.
on that website for everybody too.
yeah, that should have the link to how to refer individuals.
Great. Yeah. You're going to be busy.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, Karen, Andrea. You guys are amazing. And I just don't know how you do it. Take care of the patient.
I mean, it's a team. All of us have to work.
Group.
Yeah, seriously.
Thank
And
you for your time.
if we didn't get to your questions, be sure to follow us and join us for our next Facebook Live. We don't know who we will be speaking with, but we will definitely inform everyone on here. And that's it. Thank you so much. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Thank you, Dr. Lam.
Have a
Bye.
great weekend. Bye-bye.